Breaking news today, this coming from the NBA. The Grizzlies and Pelicans have agreed to a trade. Adrian Wojnarowski reporting that Memphis will send Jonas Valanciunas and 2 picks to New Orleans for Steven Adams, Eric Bledsoe, and 3 other picks. Let's take a look here at the details of the trade. The Pelicans would get center Jonas Valanciunas plus the 17th and 51st pick in this week's draft. The Grizzlies would then receive center Steven Adams and Eric Bledsoe plus the 10th and 40th selections in the draft. Memphis would also get a top 10 protected first-round pick in next year's draft. Senior NBA insider Adrian Wojnarowski broke this trade news. He's joining us now. Woj, the Pelicans have some urgency here to reshape their team around Zion Williamson and get to the playoffs next season. What is the purpose of this trade today for New Orleans?
Well, actually, first with Valanciunas, came off an outstanding season last year in Memphis. I think New Orleans believes he's an upgrade at center, especially on the offensive end. He spaces the floor for them. But this deal allows New Orleans to have some cap space, some financial flexibility when they go into free agency next week. They've got 2 restricted free agents of their own, Lonzo Ball and Josh Hart. But now they could have as much as $36 million in free agency, and certainly a target for them is a veteran point guard. Kyle Lowry has been among the players at the top of their list. Lowry may be anywhere from 25 to 30 million a year in free agency, but this gives a chance for New Orleans to get some more veteran point guard leadership and performance on that team as they bring back Zion Williamson, Brandon Ingram next season.
Well, Woj, it's going to be a busy week in the NBA. Let's go through your tweet from earlier today about the Pistons and the top pick because the NBA draft is coming. Detroit's internal meetings are still revolving around the 3 players for the number 1 pick on Thursday night. Cade Cunningham, Jalen Green, and Evan Mobley, sources tell ESPN. Detroit isn't fully there yet on committing to Cunningham with their first overall choice. So, Woj, what exactly are the Pistons trying to sort out when they are considering these 3 players for the top overall pick, and they only have a few days before they have to do so?
Well, simply, Ashley, which is the best one? And this is a draft, I think, where a lot of teams feel as though there are 3 legitimate number 1 overall picks, that in other years, both Mobley and Green could be number 1 picks, would be number 1 picks. Listen, I think they may yet get there on Cade Cunningham, but Troy Weaver, their general manager, listen, he's got a great history in player personnel from his time in Oklahoma City, nailed it on their first-round picks last year in Detroit. He wants to be sure that Cade Cunningham is the right one. He's not there yet. And I think Jalen Green and Evan Mobley, I think it's really speaks to how highly Detroit thinks of those 2 players. They still have some time left this week before they ultimately decide that Cade Cunningham is the choice. They may get there again, Ashley, just not there yet.
What a great problem to have, so much talent in this NBA draft. Woj, thank you so much. We appreciate it. The NBA draft, guys, is
Horst, who joins us now from Tokyo. And Brian, listen, Drew makes very good points there. They just came together. Timing is certainly not helping them. People could say we're overreacting still, though, but it is the first time the American men have lost a game at the Olympics since 2004 in Athens. It is a big deal. So what's the biggest problem to come out of that loss?
Well, Sage, as you mentioned, 7 points up with 4 minutes to play. That is a game that the Americans must close. And certainly they have challenges, but their talent level is unmatched in this tournament. Kevin Durant was in foul trouble in this game, and that definitely was an issue. But when Durant went to the bench, they brought in Jason Tatum, an All-NBA player. And so part of the issue that we're seeing here is, yes, there's cohesion and chemistry issues. Yes, there's lack of togetherness, and they haven't had the reps. We don't have guys who are not rising to the occasion. We have a lot of talent on this team. And I have to say, they have lost 5 of their last 8 games dating to the 2019 World Cup. There's a lot of excuses. Many of them are legit, but there's no excuse for that performance, and they're going to have to start playing better individually immediately.
Yeah, so I want to build off that because it's one thing to get beat up in some exhibition games, which were still concerning, but then there's this. And when you say guys really aren't all in, why?
Well, I just think it's a comfort level issue. And, Greg Popovich has changed the way he's constructed the roster from 2019 to 2021. He went through a game plan yesterday where he started with basically two of his big men, Draymond Green and Bam Adebayo, in the starting lineup. And I understand why he's done that. It makes, strategy sense, but it's not working. And you can see the players are not comfortable. And the other thing Greg Popovich is doing is he really wants them to play international style, frankly, San Antonio Spurs style basketball, where you share the ball, move the ball around the perimeter. And that is a beautiful game. It is also something that takes a long time to develop. And when you see guys like Damian Lillard passing up open shots in close games in the fourth quarter, which is not who Damian Lillard is and never is, you can tell that they're not comfortable. So steps need to be taken for them to get back to who they are, and that's got to begin against Iran on Wednesday.
And again, the time issue is totally legitimate. The finals just ended, playoffs just ended, everything backed up because of COVID. It doesn't matter now, though. We're less than 2 days away from their next game, so they got to move on. It's against Iran. What do the next couple of days look like for Team USA?
Well, they didn't have a practice today in Tokyo, so they'll practice tomorrow. They just needed some rest. But here's the thing. They still have control of their destiny. Nothing is lost per se. If they win the next 2 games this week, they will advance to the medal round. But I have to say, Sage, they need to not only play well against Iran, but they need to kind of blow them out. And the reason is because they now are facing a situation where point differential is going to matter. They're going to be out of position moving forward. And the Czech Republic is on Saturday, and I'd like to tell you that they'll win that game and be fine, but the way this team is playing right now, I can't assume a win over a team like the Czech Republic. And so they need to play well against Iran and run the score up to give themselves a cushion, because they might end up needing those points as they try to move into the next round.
That's the thing. It's not just wins and losses. It's point differential during these group stages. Brian Windhorst, man, this feels a lot different from the Dream Team days just a couple of years ago, doesn't it? Thank you for joining us. Get some sleep. It's middle of the night in Tokyo there. Thank you for taking the time.
Manhattan, brought to you by Chase. Welcome back to Jalen and Jacoby. Jalen Rose. We have some sound from soon-to-be #1 pick in the draft and future Detroit Pistons, Cade Cunningham, about your hometown. Here's what Cade had to say about the D.
Yeah, I love Detroit. I've already, been listening to Detroit music and things like that way before draft lottery, any of that stuff. So I was already hip to the, culture in Detroit. I mean, it's a city that has a lot of things going on, and I feel like, getting a sports team rolling again would be huge for the city.
Jalen, that sounds like sweet music to Motown's ears. What do you think about Cade and the D?
I just like the fact that he started off by saying he's been listening to Detroit music. So we know about the OGs like Eminem and my guy Royce Nickel 9. But that means he listening to 42 Doug and T Grizzly and Sada Baby and Boldy James. That makes me happy. And Dave Loaf and Cash Doll. So that makes me happy. With that being said, Jacoby, he is a game-changing prospect. You know how much I love my hometown team. It's one thing to have the #1 pick. It's another thing to have a consensus guy to take. And the beauty about his game is he's going to be able to not only score, but he's going to make those around him better. He's an underrated passer, an underrated playmaker. He's shown terrific character. He's going to be a great leader. And by the way, now you got to come to Detroit and go to some games with me, dog. You got to come to Detroit and go to some games with me, dog.
Oh, I'm coming. I'm sitting right now lounging. They had the Caesars Lounge on the baseline. I'll be right there watching Cade Cunningham and them lose by 10, but show a lot of promise in the process. Show a lot of promise in the process. I like Sadiq Bey, Killian Hayes, Isaiah Stewart. There is a young generation coming into Detroit that will look good around 2024, 2025. Moving on, Mr. Rose, to an impact player. Bradley Beal is being reported by Bleacher Report that he knows he has a decision to make before the draft about whether or not he will officially request a trade. Jalen, it would behoove the franchise if he did so before the draft to help them with that day. Do you think this happens in the next 48 hours?
And shout out to my brother Shears215. Ain't I Chris today? He even allowed me to borrow his glasses. How about this? So if you're Bradley Beal, when you talk to me about him being moved, you know the first thing I think about? I feel bad for Russ. You know, I feel bad for Russ. His last couple of stops, he got a chance to play with KD, and then he ended up leaving. The team traded Harden. Ain't nothing he can do about that. Go to Houston. Don't really get a chance to play that long again with Harden. Now you get to Washington. Y'all show some promise late in the season, and Bradley Beal may potentially ask for a trade. But here's what I want to make sure I acknowledge for you, David.
What's up?
This is actually a good thing for Russ, because if Bradley Beal requests a trade, that means they talked about it. And if they talked about it, that means Washington can look up, and once training camp starts, there's a good chance that they have a new roster. Is Bradley Beal and Russell Westbrook at this point of their careers the future of the Washington Wizards? I ask you, is that the future? Since it's not, you got to go ahead and start laying them dominoes right now if you're their general manager, Tommy Shepard, because both of those guys' value is as high as it's going to get. And you got to sell high in this case.
And there's so many duos in the league. And Jalen, what do I always say about duos? You've heard this a million times. I like my duos to be complementary. While Beal and Westbrook are both great contributors, they're not complementary players to each other. Something tells me they will not be a duo on the Wizards moving forward. But who will get moved? We will see. The question now in the air is, will Kawhi Leonard return to the Clippers? Friend of the show, Mark Stein, reported that it's not necessarily a guarantee that he'll be back, and maybe the Heat or the Knicks or some other teams, the Mavs, would show interest. And our guy Woj, your countdown crew brother, said that he's not sold on that. He sees Kawhi with the Clippers. Rostradamus, where do you see Kawhi next year?
As a member of the Clippers, because these all-time great players, Jacoby, you know what they don't want to do? Be like me and bounce all around the NBA if they don't have to. So Kawhi goes to Toronto after leaving San Antonio and wins the championship. Now he picks his destination. He's at where he's at. He be where he want to be. And you know what you don't want to do this offseason? Be bouncing around taking team meetings on crutches because you just had surgery. You stay with the Clippers, you get as much money as possible, and they already have established a relationship that you're going to miss games due to low management. See what happens now, you go somewhere else. They're like, well, I guess you could play 75 games. You know, why don't you try it? But in this situation, the Clippers have already basically built the equity with Kawhi Leonard, and he's probably going to play 65 games a year. Paul George ascended, and his confidence grown after this playoff run. So he's shown that he can hold it down when Kawhi's not going to be there. And this for the Clippers, to me, as they move into a new arena, you want to have Kawhi Leonard in uniform, I believe he'll be there.
I think he'll be there as well. I mean, this isn't the Kawhi Leonard free agents that we saw after his championship, finals MVP in Toronto. He was healthy. He was the king of the court. He was at the mountaintop. He just had the finals MVP. After the bubble collapse and after this year, after knowing that he won't even be able to take the floor until probably after the All-Star break, I don't know if that is a player that wants to be in the market or a player that teams are necessarily want to bring into their franchise at the price tag that he's going to demand. Jalen Anthony Rose, you're never going to believe this. You're never going to believe this. There are reports about a star player going to the Los Angeles Lakers. I know that's hard for you to wrap your head around, but the latest is that the Spurs free agent DeMar DeRozan would take less money to come to the Lakers. Now, keep in mind, he was making a lot of money, and the Lakers could offer him the $9.5 million. Something tells me when he talks about getting a haircut, he's talking about a sign and trade, not necessarily signing for $9.5 million a year.